Hi again. In A.T. Robertson, The Divinity of Christ in the Gospel of John, he's dealing now with chapter 13, an example of humility. The Gospel of John passes by the last day in the public ministry of Jesus in the temple, that Tuesday of the great debate and the great eschatological discourse on the Mount of Olives, also fully presented in the Synoptic Gospels. It is Thursday evening, Roman time, beginning of Jewish Friday, that John takes up the story. Jesus is in the upper room, prepared for him by his directions to Peter and John, and possibly the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark. This is probably the regular Passover meal at the customary time, and not an anticipatory meal 24 hours ahead. Now, this is a much disputed area in New Testament research, so Robertson is giving his perspective. This is not necessarily our perspective. Jesus had looked forward with eagerness to this last Passover meal with the men who had been with him in his trials. He was himself the true Paschal lamb to be offered up before 24 hours have passed. But a rude shock had come to Christ when he found the 12 contending for primacy at the table, each one considering himself entitled to the post of honor. They were, like all Orientals and some Westerners, sensitive on this point of etiquette, and had wrangled twice before over the question of rank among themselves as they discussed their plans for a temporal kingdom which was never to be. And again, that's a point of controversy because Robertson is not of the premillennial position on prophecy. So Robertson's opinions might have been at the time, even though he was a Baptist, a division of the Baptist community in North America anyway, and also in England, over the right understanding of prophecy. So Robertson does not come down on the dispensational side of things, nor even on the premillennial, to my understanding. So he says, again, I'll read that one sentence. They were, like all Orientals and some Westerners, sensitive on this point of etiquette, and had wrangled twice before over the question of rank among themselves as they discussed their plans for a temporal kingdom, in other words, a kingdom on earth, which was never to be. How they finally reclined, we do not know, except that John was next to Jesus and leaned back on his bosom. Divinity, in his great picture, has James on the other side, an allusion to the ambitious request of James and John. The strife evidently continued during the meal, and those who were disappointed were resentful in look and word. The devil was already in the heart of Judas, who knew what he was going to do this very night, and he was trying to get an entrance into the hearts of the rest through jealousy by the eye gate and ear gate. Jesus is conscious that his hour is near, and arises during supper and begins to wash the disciples' feet, evidently because the dissatisfaction keeps up. It is hard to stop such an unpleasantness. Each one wishes the last word and the last look. The behavior of Peter is characteristic, but Jesus does not leave his object lesson to teach its own lesson. He explains it to this kindergarten class. Ye call me teacher and Lord, and ye say, well, for so I am. Jesus asserts and repeats his claim to be the teacher and the Lord. He is here like Socrates with his disciples, but far more. He is the master in teaching and the Lord of life. He has given them an example of humility and commands their imitation of their master. They greatly needed this lesson then and there, given right in the midst of the solemn celebration of this last Passover meal. An apostle such as they were is not greater than the one who sent him. Jesus has here punctured official and ecclesiastical pride for all time. But men have missed the point of Jesus in this very example, and some have imagined that Jesus meant them literally to wash each other's feet as a church ordinance. Cessation of strife and wrangling and cooperative service in love is the way to copy Christ's example of humility. The heart of Jesus is greatly moved, for here is Judas, who has already bargained to sell his master to the Sanhedrin for 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave. He that eateth my bread lifteth up his heel against me. Jesus quoted these words, and Judas must have winced inwardly. In all countries it is considered a gross breach of hospitality to eat one's bread and then to act the part of an enemy. The Arabs today count it a covenant of friendship if one takes salt in another man's tent. It was so with the Jews. Jesus makes it plain beforehand so that the treachery of Judas may be all the plainer. Next time, the anxiety of Jesus, the remainder of chapter 13. I put in a link to Do JWs Cultivate Humility and the Fruits of the Spirit? This is a discussion of Ray Franz's book, In Search of Christian Freedom. See you then.